Good afternoon. We're going to get started and welcome to today's press event. Uh, my name is Ryan Bates. I'm the director at End Gun Violence Michigan. We're a statewide coalition of faith, labor, teacher, student, and gun violence prevention groups, all working to make Michigan safer. We came together because we refuse to accept that guns are the #1 cause of death for children in our state. Um, for years, advocates and survivors have been calling on our leaders in Lansing to pass common sense gun violence prevention bills. And today, in the Michigan Senate, they heard us. The Michigan Senate passed red flag laws, safe storage, and universal background checks. These laws will save lives. These laws are common sense. These laws respect the rights of law-abiding, responsible gun owners and hunters and sportsmen. Here today with us to react to the passage of these bills in the legislature, we have several speakers, which include Dylan Morris, who's the executive director of No Future Without Today, a group of students who organized after the Oxford shooting to advocate for stronger gun laws. Michelle Oppenheim, who is a high school teacher at Waverly High School in Lansing. Robin O'Keefe, who is a special education paraprofessional in the Birmingham Public Schools, and Adrian Trupiano, who currently works with the Episcopal Diocese of Michigan, but is a survivor of the Henry Ford College shooting, as well as 2 other workplace shootings. We're here today because we are grateful and proud of our legislators for finally taking action and hearing advocates and survivors. These bills are important, they're historic, and they will save lives. I'm going to hand things over to Michelle to talk about her experience and perspective as a classroom teacher.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate being given the opportunity to tell the story of what it's like to be a teacher. This is actually my 19th year teaching and my first year actually not being in the classroom full time. I've actually been working as an instructional coach this year, which has given me the opportunity to be in the classrooms of my colleagues. And what that opportunity has afforded me is the opportunity to see that my fear that I was bringing with me every day to school for the previous 18 years, it was not unique. It was not special. My colleagues come with that same fear. I've heard of teachers who have golf clubs and baseball bats and baseballs stashed around their classroom. I have a teacher who told me that she has belts in a drawer that she plans to use as tourniquets if need be. I have another teacher who told me that part of what they do at the start of each semester is ask their students to look around the room and figure out what they would throw. These experiences of talking with these teachers are both validating and heartbreaking. This should not be the reality that we are dealing with as educators. Sending my own children, once they became school-aged, to school added a new layer of fear. And I say fear, but the real word here would be terror, because I knew that they were going to start practicing code red drills. And if you're not in a school setting, you may not be familiar with what a code red is. These are required by schools, just like tornado drills and fire drills. And basically they amount to a required practice for what to do in the event of an active shooter being in your building. And it means in most cases, hiding quietly in the dark while law enforcement check the doors and make sure that your building is secure. They're terrifying. They're unsettling every time they happen, and they're required at least 2 to 3 times a year. I knew my kids were going to be going through this experience, and I started to think about things very differently once that reality settled in. And I know as a teacher, what I do when I stand up and perform a code red with my students is I reassure them that my #1 job is to keep them safe. I reassure them that my job is to try and make sure that they make it home safely to their family. And I tell them that I too have a family that I hope to make it home safely to. And every time I'm reminded about my kids' teachers. And I think about the fact that they are just like me. They have, many of them are mothers and fathers themselves. And I am praying that they will be willing to do everything they can to protect my children if the unthinkable happens. And it's shocking to me that, when I signed up for my major, declared my major in my early 20s, like I wanted to teach English. I wanted to talk about literature. I wanted to talk about writing. And somehow I was implicitly asked to make the ultimate sacrifice. And of course I would, because I pray that someone would do that for my child. And if you don't think that every teacher in America walks into school thinking about that every day, they do. As a parent, I think about it every day. I put my kid on the bus to school. And it's this chronic anxiety and stress. And we know that the best learning happens in environments where people feel a sense of safety and trust. So in my mind, I'm floored that any education ever happens, because this anxiety is there. It's present with the teachers. It's absolutely present with the kids as well. So when I'm in these classrooms seeing what my colleagues do, I feel like it's nothing short of a miracle that they are able to create these communities of trust within the limited walls of their classroom and allow for that learning to happen. But I can also tell you, it takes a Herculean effort and a tremendous amount of skill, and it is exhausting, that chronic amount of stress. And for a very, very, very long time, we have been asking for help and support, and we have felt helpless and we have felt unheard. So it feels absolutely amazing to hear that the Senate has moved these bills forward today.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for both your work as a teacher, for speaking out. And I just want to underline something you said. We're asking teachers implicitly when they sign up to teach to be willing to take a bullet for their students. And Michelle just said that she's willing to do that. So that's wrong, that we have to be asking our teachers to take that position and to make that sacrifice. And thank you for being there for your students, Michelle. Next, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, Adrian Trupiano, who is with the Episcopal Diocese of Michigan, but has the unfortunate distinction of having survived 3 workplace shootings in her life. Adrian?
Thank you, Ryan. And thank you everyone for being here. What I want to speak to is unfortunately what I know the best. I want to help people understand the scope and the path of destruction that mass shootings have in the aftermath. And I'm in no way minimizing the death itself or the loss of life that others have experienced and that their families are still experiencing. But do we really understand the mental health aftershocks of what survivors go through? I've been in 3 workplace shootings, as Ryan said, in Michigan since 1999. I was in the Southfield Town Center shooting in 1999, the WDIV Studios shooting in 2004, and the Henry Ford College shooting in 2009. The Henry Ford College shooting on Good Friday of 2009 was my 3rd workplace shooting. The shooting took place just down the hall from where I was. I don't remember much from that day. Having already witnessed 2 shootings prior, my brain couldn't process that this was happening again. The next few days were a blur. I don't remember driving myself home that day. I slept through the weekend, my family tells me. I don't remember Easter that year, but I know I was there because I can look back at the photographs and see myself. At that time, I had 2 young children. I mean, they're older now, but those are important years in a mother's life, and most of it's gone. As I listened to the testimony of the hearings last week, these past few weeks in Lansing, I've listened to so many people speak, and there was a lot of talk about mental health intervention. And I can only think of the mental health damage that these shootings have created. There's another side to it, guys. And I don't speak as a therapist and I don't speak as a psychiatrist. I speak because I've lived it. Whether it's a struggle of feeling safe in buildings, a strain on your personal or professional relationships, maybe it's the ability to hold a job, to remain social, to care about anything. These things are part of the tragedy of gun violence. And to be completely honest, I was normal, I mean, so to speak, before these shootings. I was going about my daily business, being a contributing member to society. I was in places where I felt safe, until those places were no longer safe. Survivors experience ongoing mental health problems, including PTSD. Now, it's a little different from like soldiers' PTSD, because when you're in a war, you're strapped, you got a gun, and you're going out. This is what years of therapy has taught me. It's a little bit different because you're mentally prepared, and I'm in no way minimizing veterans and PTSD, but the difference is we were in places where we were supposed to be safe. So it's a different category of PTSD. There's depression, there's anxiety that Michelle talked about. Every time a whole communities feel it every time something happens. And then there's substance abuse, because you can't block out the screaming and the sounds and the smells, and it's terrible. And so the deaths don't stop after the shootings. People have experienced mass shootings. They're at risk for suicide. They're at risk for death from substance abuse. And so for survivors, the cost of bearing witness to violence is something that manifests itself in so many ways. And for the state of Michigan, there's ongoing costs that we're still just beginning to understand. I needed help from the state of Michigan. And now communities from Oxford and from Michigan State, they're also going to they're going to have to look to Michigan for help. And my experience used to be rare. It really did. But unfortunately, now there's young people and teachers who have experienced their second school shooting within miles of each other. And today, our legislators, thank God, have taken measures to help ensure that these young people will not experience a third shooting in a place where they're supposed to feel safe. Every person is going to be affected differently, but what the state of Michigan has done right now is they've said to these communities, we hear you. And what that's going to do is that's going to help them focus on their healing. Because it has been a long time since my first shooting in 1999, and there has been nothing. Nothing has been done. And it is such a long road that I have traveled, along with others. There were people in those buildings with me. And what I would ask of people surrounding these communities, people surrounding these students, people surrounding these teachers, is to be empathetic, because their journey is just starting. And they have a road ahead of them, and they have no idea how they're going to get to the end of it. For so many years, many of us lost faith in our Michigan legislators because they refused to act. We watched helpless time and time again as our beloved communities were shattered by gun violence. And today, the faith has been restored. They finally heard our cries. And the bills that passed today will not only save lives, but in my own life, this is going to help myself and other survivors navigate through this lifelong healing journey that we struggle with daily. Thank you so much for listening and for being here. Amen.
Thank you, Adrian. I just want to underline how unfair it is that people who've had your experience have to kind of relive your trauma to get our leaders to listen and make change. So I really want to honor and appreciate you for being willing to get on camera today and share those unimaginable memories and experiences with us to help others. So thank you. Now I'm going to introduce Robin O'Keefe, who's a special education paraprofessional in the Birmingham Public Schools.
Thank you, Ryan, and thanks to all of you for being here today to elevate awareness on this really, really important issue. As Ryan said, I've been working as a special education paraprofessional in Birmingham schools for the last decade, and I'm currently serving on the Michigan Education Association Board of Directors. I also am the mom of 4 adult children. My youngest is a senior at Michigan State University and endured a terrifying evening of sheltering in place while an active shooter killed and injured her classmates there. And so this issue is very close to heart for our family. Education is a profession that I chose because I've always loved school and learning and children. Growing up, my father suffered from bipolar disorder that sometimes went unmanaged. And at those times, our house would descend into chaos. I'm so glad that he didn't have access to a gun. For me, school was a safe place, a refuge from the storm that sometimes raged at home. It's heartbreaking that today, due to the epidemic of gun violence in our country, that school is no longer the reliable, safe place for children that it was for me. I became a special education professional because I wanted to help create that safe place for more children who need it. Supporting children with special education services is not easy. It's a labor of love. And I'm happy to do it because I know I'm making a meaningful impact in their lives. I can do the long days. I can handle it when the students are having a hard or bad day. And I know that you understand that I'm not doing it for the money. But beyond supporting the students in our care, there's a new expectation for us as educators. Due to the epidemic of school shootings, we're expected to be able to protect our students from crazed gunmen. We're supposed to lock down our classrooms in a second, and if the maniac targets our classroom, lead the defense by building barricades or throwing math books or stabbing with pencils. This is madness. And while there's no making sense of it, the students that I support in special education can be especially challenged to understand that their school, the place that we and their families tell them should be their happy and safe place, could become a combat zone. Some of our students, many who are already coping with underlying anxiety, are panicked by what in our district, Michelle referred to as red code, we refer to as Alice drills. One student that I work with gets so frightened that he will flee and lock himself in a bathroom and refuse to come out. I signed up to care, to nurture, to teach, to mentor. I signed up for the challenge of giving different learners the support that they need to be successful. But I did not sign up to be my student's bodyguard. I did not sign up to pretend that I can protect them from a hail of gunfire. We already expect so much from educators, teaching all day and grading at night, spending our own money on classroom supplies, taking the extra time to be our students' confidant. Isn't that enough? Now we're expected to be Rambo as well on our jobs. It's no wonder that there's an educator shortage. I think of the shootings in Oxford and Uvalde. So many of those educators, understandably, have left the profession. We have to value our children more than we value the guns. It's that simple. An example of what teaching looks like in America today. In January, in Virginia, a 6-year-old brought a gun to school and shot his teacher in the chest. The teacher, despite having a hole in her chest from a 9mm handgun shot at point blank range, used her last ounce of energy to escort the rest of her class to safety before collapsing. Abigail Zwerner. She's going to live, thank God, but the police aren't even sure if there's a crime to charge because the shooter was a 6-year-old, obviously not competent to stand trial. And we're seeing the same thing here in Michigan. The parents of Ethan Crumbly thought it was perfectly fine to give their mentally disturbed teenage son a semi-automatic pistol, which he used to murder his classmates. Those parents also may not successfully be charged with a crime. That is teaching in America today. How can we possibly expect our educators to teach and our students to learn when our classrooms could turn into a war zone at any second? That's why these bills are important. Safe storage. If parents are required to lock up their guns, kids don't have access to them and can't bring them to school. It's that simple. When safe storage was passed by the Republican legislature in Florida, youth firearm deaths went down 52%. Simple. Here's a horrible irony. In January, a week after Abigail Zwerner was shot in Virginia, our organization was holding a press conference in Grand Rapids to call for a safe storage law. Literally, while our members were taking questions from the press, a student was caught with a handgun at Burton Middle School just a few miles away. Incredibly, it was the second time in 6 months that a gun had been taken away from a student at that same middle school. This shouldn't be difficult or complicated. The way to protect our students and educators is to keep guns out of the hands of children. Safe storage makes this the law and ensures that all gun owners must act responsibly. I love being an educator, but I'm tired of feeling like teaching is a life or death decision. Our 23-year-old son, Quinn, is becoming a teacher too. It's been his dream since he was old enough to walk and talk, holding a pretend classroom at Raynal School in our basement. It's a dream we've nurtured and supported, and one that he's overcome great personal challenges to achieve. This fall, he will have his first real classroom as he begins his student teaching through Albion College. Our family is so proud of him, but we're also scared for him. And that's why I'm so glad that our legislature is moving forward with these laws. Someone is finally looking out for me, for my son Quinn as he becomes a teacher, and for our students. While we're making incredible progress, and I'm glad that our leaders in Lansing are taking action and listening to us. They're finally doing something that gives me hope that our schools can once again be the refuge that they were for me in my childhood, and the safe and happy place that our students deserve today. Thank you very much.
Robin, thank you for sharing your perspective. And I'll say, as the father of a 7-year-old who gets special education services, thank you for what you do for kids. I'm going to hand things over to Dylan from No Future Without Today.
Thank you for having me, Ryan, and thank you to End Gun Violence Michigan for also having us be part of this coalition of amazing advocates and organizations working to prevent gun violence here in the state of Michigan. My name is Dylan Morris, and I am a senior at Oxford High School and the executive director of No Future Without Today. On November 30, 2021, I was on my way to my 5th hour class when shots were fired outside of a bathroom. And it killed 4 students, 4 of my classmates, Hannah St. Juliana, Tate Meir, Justin Schilling, and Madison Baldwin. And the perpetrator injured 7 others. He used an unsecured handgun from home. Just an hour ago, senators in the gun sense majority passed key pieces of legislation that are proven to save lives. And I had the opportunity to witness this historic marking in our state. We could not have done this without the gun safety champions in our state legislature, like Senator Bayer, Chang, and Brinks. There was a time when I thought that action would never be taken on this issue. Advocates, for as long as I can remember, have been pushing for extreme risk protection orders, safe storage laws, and universal background checks. I've been pushing for them for 15 months as a survivor of the Oxford shooting. A safe storage law could have either prevented the shooting at my school or given us a way to hold the parents of the shooter accountable. We don't know if we will have this, unfortunately. After the shooting at my high school, students and parents begged the politicians in Lansing to act, but they refused. They did not schedule a hearing for us. Today is different. Today is historic. Our senators worked hand in hand with students and advocates to pass these bills that will save countless lives. And this is just a foundation of more gun safety to come that will keep Michiganders safe. Though our advocacy work isn't over, we will continue to urge the members of the Michigan House to move these bills forward to the governor's desk, because I do not want my younger classmates to have to dodge bullets, hide in the corner of classrooms, and text their relatives that they love them in the same way that I did. Again, this legislation is groundbreaking. They heard us today and many days before, and it will prevent instances of gun violence in all its forms, mass casualty events, domestic abuse, suicides, and everyday gun violence. We are painting the world we want to see for our classmates, community members, and the next generations to come, so that we do not have to endure the pain and suffering that follows gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. And I want to thank all of the students from Oxford at No Future Without Today and the organizations that have gotten together at Michigan State University. It's the voice of student survivors of gun violence, more than any, that have driven this debate and held the politicians accountable and not let us adults off the hook. I usually don't do this, but I want to give my perspective as a parent. Uh, After the shooting at Oxford, um, most of the school shut down. And at the time, my son was 6. He was in kindergarten. Uh, and I didn't want him to hear what happened on the playground. I wanted him to hear it from me. And I thought that was going to be one of the hardest conversations of my life as a father, but it wasn't. That Monday, I walked my son to school, as I do every day, and he stopped and he wouldn't go into the schoolyard. I looked down at him, I said, what's wrong, Jimmy? You gotta get going, man. And he looked up at me and he said, Daddy, I'm scared someone's going to come with a gun to my school. He was 6 and he was worried about being murdered in his kindergarten. So I got down on one knee and I said, don't worry, pal. School's a safe place. Nothing bad's going to happen here. And what broke my heart was not just that he was worried about being murdered in his kindergarten. It was that I had to lie to him about being safe. No parent should ever have to lie to their kid. And today, I got to watch leaders like Stephanie Chang and Rosemary Bayer listen to the parents and to the students who want that safe, secure future for their children. In the face of tragedy, in the face of constant fear, in the face of laws that have valued guns over children's lives, finally, we're taking action. So as a parent who obviously has big feelings about this, I want to thank our senators for what they did today. And I look forward to the day these are law, and I can tell my son that he's safer at school. That's all of our speakers for now. We can turn things over to the press if there are questions. So, I see a hand. I see Arpan Lobo. Do you mind giving us your outlet and go ahead?
No, not at all. Arpan Lobo with the Detroit Free Press. Dylan, you had mentioned that while today is a really big day, of course, you said the advocacy work is not done. And House Speaker Joe Tate said recently that he's open to further policies. Are there other gun safety proposals you would like to see lawmakers take up in an effort to kind of prevent further instances of gun violence beyond the 3 that have kind of been the main point of the initial package?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, these are foundational pieces of legislation that we are just getting here in the state of Michigan. And so we do look forward to advocating for further pieces of legislation concerning gun violence prevention. We're looking at, as No Future Without Today, pieces like magazine capacity limits and eventually an assault weapons ban. But we have to understand too that gun violence is a very nuanced issue. It isn't black and white. It requires a myriad of solutions, and that also includes expanding mental health care access. And so we look forward to working with the state legislature on that too, to make sure that communities, after a school shooting too, because in Oxford we did not have great access to mental health care resources. We want to expand these and make sure that they're affordable and accessible and quality.
Thanks, Arpan. Are there other questions for the press? Thank you, Dylan. Next time we'll get a wider angle lens. Okay, if there are no further questions from the press, I want to thank Dylan, Michelle, Adrian, and Robin, and Lauren Jasinski, our partner from the MEA, who helped organize today's event. We'll be sending out a recording of this video along with quotes. Thanks, everybody.